What's up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Fighting Words. I just saw the title that you put on this, Make Bryce Elite Again, and I started to laugh right as we went live. I'm Bob Wankel. Anthony Sanfilippo's here. It's a postseason edition, a postseason edition of Fighting Words. I'll tell you what, man. I go back to a couple of years ago, like the postseason wrap-up press conference. I guess it was maybe after 19 and maybe after 21, and they were some of the worst postseason wrap-ups I've ever seen.
You're talking about the one with Middleton giving out the stats?
Yeah. Oh my God. I sat there that day in that room, and I just walked out, and I was like, "What on earth are we doing here?" Yesterday was by far the most fascinating and long postseason wrap up I've ever really taken in, man. And you were there, and I listened to it in its entirety as well. And there is so much to unpack. If I'm being honest with you, I think that this is far more interesting than talking about the playoff games.
Yes. Yeah.
So here we are. There is a lot to sort through after Dave Dombrowski's comments yesterday at Citizens Bank Park. So I'll bring you in here, and you tell me where you want to start, because I have a whole list of things to run through.
Well, I think we got to start, and it's thus the title of the episode. I think we got to start with Dombrowski's comments about Bryce Harper, which blew me away. Like he talked for 54 minutes, and then Rob, I think it was like 32. So all told, we got an hour and a half of press conference yesterday, which was, it's an exorbitantly long time, right? I mean, we never get that much time with people. And so that's why it was fascinating to me. But I really felt that there was a lot of directness from Dombrowski towards the players. And we've not seen that kind of in the past. And the one with Bryce, I thought was the most intriguing, because here's your superstar who's in the middle of his 13-year contract, right? Going into year 8 now, right? He's got 6 years left. They've done 7 years, 6 left. Smack dab in the middle, and he's questioning whether or not Bryce Harper will be elite again. And I'm sitting there saying, is he really saying this right now? Like, I don't know. Is it a shot across the bow? Is he trying to motivate him to be more than he was in 2025? Look, we talked about 2025 being a weird year for Harper, right? Like, if you erase or cover his name and just look at the stats, you go, oh, that's a pretty good baseball player, right? It's 3-WAR baseball player, 844 OPS, 27 home runs in 132 games. That's a pretty good season for a baseball player. He's still top 25 in the league in OPS, like legitimately good player. But then you put Bryce Harper's name in front of it and go, it's just And so, like, are they trying to motivate him, or are they questioning now, have we seen the best of Bryce Harper? And he made a comparison to Freddie Freeman, which was interesting because Freddie Freeman's 3 years older than Bryce, right? Or almost 4 years older than Bryce, 3.5 years. And if you look back at Freddie Freeman's age 32 year, he hit 59 doubles, was 4th in the National League in MVP voting. Mm-hmm. And then in his age 33 year, he was even better. He was 3rd in MVP voting. And if you look at him this year, 2025, at age 36, his numbers were better than Bryce this year at age 32. So I'm not sure if you're trying to say Bryce has just taken a tiny step back like Freeman has, comparing his age 32 to his age 36, or you're trying to say that Bryce can still be that good and just wasn't this year. I don't know what the message was, but it was crazy.
So there are a couple different ways that I think you can unpack it. First of all, nothing that Dave Dombrowski said during that press conference yesterday was factually incorrect, in my opinion. I thought he spoke a lot of truth. I was not in love with everything that he said. I would push back on some of what he said, but when you just look at the facts of it, I think there's a lot of truth in many of the things that he said, including what he said about Bryce Harper, which is that he's a good player. He is not elite at the moment. You know, it'll be up to him whether or not he becomes elite again. And he's not sure if he'll be elite again. And in real time, it's certainly a remarkable thing to hear. I mean, you just don't hear executives talk about franchise players with such honesty. And if you wanted to look at it from a more constructive standpoint, you would say, yeah, perhaps it is a challenge to Bryce Harper, or perhaps it is saying to him, hey, we do need more out of you, and it's going to be on you to do more. Because if we're going to get to where we want to go ultimately with this iteration of this team, and you can tweak and you can talk about the upcoming free agents, you're going to need Bryce Harper to be better and better in bigger moments as well. But I think about it, and I think about the type of player that Bryce Harper is and the type of mentality that Bryce Harper has. And is Bryce Harper really the guy that needs an external motivation? Is he a guy that needs to be challenged publicly like that? And I don't think that he is. And so I don't know that that was what Dave Dombrowski's angle was in making those comments. I kind of think that Dave was maybe just a little bit underwhelmed with Bryce, like everyone was this year, and just sort of put it out there. I just don't know that it was a challenge. And I don't know that I look at it from a standpoint that he's trying to get more out of Bryce. I think he was just being like, hey, like Bryce wasn't that player this year. And I don't know that he's going to be that player ever again. Or if you want to go a little bit more sinister, they're not thrilled with Bryce Harper about something else, whether it be lingering impact of that contract extension request 2 years ago, whether maybe there's something behind the scenes about his day-to-day behaviors. Is it possible that they did not love the on-field energy at times this year? We questioned it. We've talked about it on this show. Hey, is Bryce Harper fully there right now? He doesn't seem to be playing with his hair on fire. He doesn't have the juice. He doesn't have that fire in his belly that we see or we've seen in the past from him. Is it more of like a tap to that? He is what he is as a player, but where the hell is he as a leader? Where is he as a fiery player that makes a difference, in terms of a team's chemistry and its makeup? And I wonder if it's more about that than it is, hey, can Bryce Harper hit 38 home runs and be a top 5 MVP type player again?
Yeah, no, I think it was a challenge. I think it was basically like, we've capitulated to you in so many different ways over the course of your first 7 years with us. And now we need you to capitulate to us a little bit. Right. And I think that's kind of that transitional mode. Like, look, you were not the most important player for this team this year. Yeah. You were not. There were others that were more important than you. We need you to get back to the status of being the most important player for us. You can't just be a guy along for the ride, as talented as you are. And I think that's what it is. Again, I don't think it was an outright gauntlet being thrown down. But I think it was a message sender for sure.
Well, I think the other question is, I wonder how that, and maybe the more important thing in all of this was, how was that received? Because if you're Bryce Harper and you tune into that yesterday and you say, all right, well, we're bringing back Topper, we're bringing back the coaching staff, which I want to talk about in a minute. And you're doing all these things. And then you hear those comments, do you go, all right, heard, and then, do something about it? Or do you kind of go down this road where you're Bryce Harper and you sit there and you listen to Dave Dombrowski say that and you say, you fucking kidding me? You're going to say that about me?
Well, that's interesting because it could be either. Right? It really could be. Like he's the kind of guy who he lets you know that he knows what his status is, but he's also the kind of guy who likes to accept a challenge or likes that those motivating factors. I mean, we've seen it, right? Yeah. The whole, good job Harper thing, right? And like that lit the fuse. And anytime fans call him overrated, he goes out and hits a home run and then chirps back at the fan. So like he's motivated in that way, but he's also Bryce Harper. And it's like, you don't challenge Bryce. So it could be either one, Bob. That's what's fascinating about this. And I'm not sure we're going to hear from him until February. Like, really, I guess there's a possibility that some national outlet gets him to come on and talk over the winter and he says something there. But we may not hear anything until the first day of spring training in February, when all the Philadelphia reporters in Clearwater will then say to him, so Bryce, this is what Dombrowski said at the end of the season. What do you say to that now? And he'll have some well thought out and rehearsed answer that he took 4 months to construct. But that's when it might be that we hear from him.
Well, I have a pretty definitive feeling about this, but I'm driving around this morning. I dropped my kids off at the in-laws, and my daughter goes to school, and I'm in the car for 90 minutes in the morning. So I turn on WIP, and I'm like, all right, let's take in what the talk is here. I don't really subscribe to this, but I think it at least warrants being floated on the show, given what we're talking about. Is there any world where the Phillies would just say, like, listen, we're saying what it is. If Bryce doesn't like it, maybe we can enter a conversation about waiving a no trade clause, and we'll explore that. I will just follow up my question by saying I don't think that I would say if you said 1 to 100, I'd say like 1/2 of 1 on that scale. But, is there anything to this where they're like, you know what, let's challenge him to the degree that we would say, like, let's try to perk his ears up a little bit where he considers maybe taking this elsewhere?
Not now. No, I'm with you that there's in my mind, there is no world where they're moving on from Bryce Harper, trying to move on from Bryce Harper this season. Now, is it planting a seed for down the line? Or if this doesn't go well, if he continues to be a mediocre, melancholy, mercurial, any M word you can think of, superstar, then maybe that's the seed being planted. But I don't think this is one of those situations where it's like, hey, Bryce, we're challenging you. If you don't like it, waive your no trade clause. We'll send you somewhere else.
Right.
Like, I don't think that's the plan here.
Do you think that he would get 6 years, $180 million in the open market right now?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I do. And not only that, that's what makes this contract so friendly for the Phillies. Yeah. Like, why would
I know we're all sitting here like a little bit underwhelmed by Bryce Harper, but I think about it, I'm like, he's got 6 years left at $30 million per. Like, this is still a good deal for them, even in this moment.
Yeah, and his AAV is lower than that. Like, I think it's like 25, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, to me, that's so worth it. It's a very, very affordable, team-friendly contract.
I thought that comment or the comments that Dave made about Bryce sort of set the tone for and sort of encapsulated the overarching theme of the press conference, which is it's on the players. It wasn't on the team that we built. It's not on the managers or the coaches. It's on the players and the guys that we're paying to be, elite alpha type players in key moments to do more. And I guess I just want to question whether or not that's entirely fair. I mean, look, the one thing that sort of agitated me about yesterday was, as I said, there was a lot of truth in it. They need more from Bryce Harper. They had a good team. It won 96 games. It was a bad matchup. But that's where I kind of said, all right, Dave. And I felt like it was a little tone deaf in that moment because it felt like there was a lot of directness and a lot of criticism and a lot of truth telling about everybody else except for the construction of the team. Well, it's like we did what we could do. And we might have went to the World Series if we didn't match up with the Dodgers in the NLDS. And I know that's true. Like, the Dodgers are taking apart the Brewers right now. And so if you didn't think that the Phillies were the best team in the National League, you thought the Brewers were coming into this. I mean, the Brewers looked completely inept, like, especially from an offensive standpoint.
And I'll say this too, just to add on to what you're about to say. The Dodgers are going to take apart whoever they play.
Yeah, they're going to beat the piss out of them. Yeah, I mean, I think that the Dodgers are probably going to win the NLCS in 4 games, and I'll give Toronto. I would give Toronto a game because I think that they'll probably do what the Phillies did in the DS, which is like show up and erupt for a game, and then the rest of it they'll be quiet. So that would make the Dodgers go what 3-1, 4-0, 4-1. I mean, you're talking about an 11-2 postseason at that point.
13-2. Don't forget they won
13-2 because of 2 games against the Reds, and they're going to give up, Philly series onward, probably 1.5 runs per game. It's a great team, and so it's true. But it kind of feels like, hey, we need more out of this guy, we need more out of that guy, we expect this and that. But what are you going to do? We played the Dodgers, and I just don't like that. It's stopping short of saying that's baseball, but I just feel like you need more. A little bit more from we can do more to build a better team and be better prepared. Because the reality of it is that you had to go to David Robertson, who's leaking oil in key spots. Matt Strom's not a lockdown guy. You had to use Orion Kerkering with your season on the line, a guy that in the middle of September you said to yourself, this guy can't throw an important inning in any situation whatsoever, ever in the playoffs. Like, you left your bullpen short. You were using Brandon Marsh as your friggin' 5-hitter in the playoffs. And you can talk about the Harrison Bader injury all you want, but Harrison Bader's not Albert Pujols, for Christ's sake. You know, you had Alec Boehm hitting cleanup. Like, so to me, you can sit here and say that we were the second best team probably in baseball or the National League, but you can't sit here and tell me that you had this full bulletproof team when the reality is you didn't.
Yeah, I mean, and that's, you know, and we got a question from Ryan Clark, and it kind of goes to what you're saying. When do we start questions about Dombrowski and his contracts? A lot of money to spend with no World Series. And yeah, I mean, and you know, I asked a question, and we'll get to the specific answer to this down the line here in this show. But when I asked a question to Dave about the bullpen, which you texted me, I was sitting there right after his answer, and you texted me that it was a bad answer.
It was a terrible answer. It was a great question. Yeah. What a woefully short answer that was, though.
Yeah. And it was, you know, and my question was, you know, considering the struggles that the bullpen had all season long, and then you get to the end of the playoffs and you're relying on starters more than your bullpen again to try and beat the Dodgers, do you look at how you approach building that bullpen differently this offseason than you did last offseason? That was my question. And he basically said no. And we'll get into that answer later. But it's right. Like, there is a little bit of we did all we could, and maybe they didn't do all they could.
Oh, we got,
and I think that's a problem.
And Max Lazar is on the upward trajectory. I'm like, what are we talking about? Like, look at their bullpen right now. Let's go into next season. You have Duran, great. You feel good about that. You have Ryan Kerkering, if he's here, which I expect him to be because he's cheap and still has upside, and they'll probably let him navigate the mental journey of overcoming what happened, I guess, because I don't think they're going to get value back for him. So, okay, that's an option. Do you really trust him in any key spot at the moment? No. Does that mean that he can't get there in time? I guess not. Jose Alvarado, I guess we'll get the healthy version of Jose Alvarado, who looked more like the guy that we saw at the start of this season. It sounds like he'll be back based on what we heard yesterday. Matt Strahm in the postseason the last 2 years has absolutely friggin' killed this team. He's killed them. And like, he had a great year 2 seasons ago in 24. He wasn't as good this year. He's still an above average relief pitcher. That's fine. But he fucking killed them in 24 and 25 when it mattered most. So like, that's your guy. Like, the bullpen's not good enough. And that was the one thing he could have said. Like, I can't change the core entirely here. We got to get more out of our players, but I could have built a better bullpen. And he didn't even take the opportunity to just shoot that layup and put a little bit on himself. And that bothers me.
Yeah, it bothers me too. I was a little surprised at the answer that he gave me. And you're right in so many things. By the way, just as a little aside, how about the shot he took at Matt Strahm?
And I wonder what that's like. Is that about that particular instance with the PFPs? First of all, I thought Strahm's comments about like, well, we didn't do enough PFPs is insane because that had nothing to do with PFPs. That had to do with situational awareness and having a plan in the moment. That wasn't a mechanical thing. It was a mental thing. And so, like, I get that Strahm might have been trying to stick up for his teammate after a devastating moment, but I don't think that was the way to do it, to kind of point the finger and say, hey, the staff didn't adequately prepare us. So then Dombrowski like levels him, says, we did him.
Yeah.
You didn't do him. What do you make of that? Is that about just the situation and being upset that Strahm went there in this case, or is that more about Matt Strahm in general? Like,
yeah, I wonder. Like, you know,
he was so agitated. He was so. I'll tell you what, Anthony. You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of as being a high school coach, walking off the field after a player doesn't do something that's very routine and should have happened. And you know that you did everything as a coaching staff to kind of prepare for that situation, and the player didn't execute. And you say, hey, we got to do more of it. I got to put it on me. You know, that's what you think as a coach. But privately to yourself, you're like, what more can we do? Right. And you hear the parent, you know, saying like, oh, I guess they didn't practice that. And you're like, yeah, we did practice it, actually, you know? And like, you know, like that's kind of like what that whole situation reminded me of.
Yeah, you know, we were there. I mean, that was the day that they had the open practice for the media to be present in the week in between. We watched them do the picture fielding practice, which is why I was like perplexed when Strahm said it. Now, they're right. I don't remember. I was in my trying to go back through my memory banks, and I don't remember seeing Matt Strahm participating in it. Doesn't mean he didn't, but I don't remember it. But for Dombrowski to basically say, "Oh, we did it, but he didn't do it. He didn't take part in it." It's like, it's kind of like, you know what? Just shut up.
Yeah.
Right. And again, so this kind of was the theme of it gets back to what we were saying earlier. This was the theme of this press conference yesterday. It was all about no excuses, players. Stop coming up with excuses. Stop saying we need to do, we should have done this or should have done that.
It's concerning to me, though, that if he felt going in, if that was premeditated, to say one of the things that I really want to get across in this hour-long press conference is that it's on the players. We feel like there was too much excuse making. We feel that these guys didn't do everything within their power to take advantage of this moment. Like, did they as an organization feel that this is more of an underlying issue than maybe we would have initially expected? And that's what I don't know. Is it that you just played the Dodgers, or is it that there are a lot of things here that they feel like are problematic and they know they're not going to be able to truly redesign and recalibrate the roster? So it's more about, let's try this. This is the next thing we can do, because ultimately we can't do that much more to this roster.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. Like, so I don't want to sit here and just completely bash Dombrowski, although I disagree with some of the answers that he gave, because and the reality of it is that I have the ability that I know a lot of fans don't, because they look at it with blinders on, and I do have the ability to step back and recognize that this team was constructed well enough to do anything except beat the Dodgers in a 5-game series.
Yeah.
And even then it was close enough that it almost did. Right? I mean, you lost 3 games to the Dodgers. They could have won any one of the 3, or all of them for that matter. So I sit there and say, part of me says Dombrowski is right to an extent. Like, he did put together a team that could win. He really, really did. But that doesn't mean that what he put together was the right mix. And so, like, that's where I'm like, you can't be arm's length on this. You have to take some responsibility yourself into how this team was put together, as that being part of its failing.
Yeah, like, for instance, like, maybe and I know he said he had a good year or whatever, but like, maybe I shouldn't have signed Max Kepler. Like, I know that there was a sentiment that, like, at the end of the year, Kepler kind of picked it up a little bit, and that's all fine and well. Like, nobody owes Dave Dombrowski an apology on the Max Kepler signing. Like, it wasn't the right signing. It hurt them. Maybe don't do that signing. Maybe be a little bit more creative in getting Alec Boehm out of here if you felt that might make a difference. Maybe be a little bit more creative in getting Nick Castellanos out of here last offseason. Maybe that would have given you a little bit more flexibility. Maybe if you would have paid $20 of the $40 million last offseason, you could have allocated that $20 million elsewhere this season to get a little bit better, to not be on the wrong side of losing to the Dodgers in 3 tight games.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're absolutely right. And you mentioned Alec Boehm. I thought another really interesting thing about the Dombrowski portion of the press conference was that for 54 minutes, we talked about this team, and not once did he bring up Alec Boehm. Not once did he mention his name in any capacity. And it makes you wonder if this time it's going to be, we'll take less than he think he's worth to make a change at that position. Because when you really look at it, if you want to make a change with this team and change with this lineup, where are you doing it easily? Like, if you want to bring back, let's just say, because I'm pretty convinced they're going to bring back Schwarber, and they're going to bring back Real Muto. I'm pretty convinced of this. More so Schwarber than Real Muto, but I'm pretty confident on both of them. If that's the case, and you're investing more dollars in 33-year-old, 35-year-old guys, right? Where can you make change to improve the team? And it's not just going to be in the outfield and say it's going to be Crawford, somebody else, and a platoon in the other spot. You got to potentially move on from that guy, right? I mean, that's got to be the messages. And the other thing that comes out of it, and it ties into this as well, is I don't think it necessarily means, well, if you move on from Boehm, they're going to bring in a big name free agent to play third base. I'm not convinced of that either, because the other big winner from yesterday's press conference,
Otto Kemp.
yes.
Yeah.
Like, did that surprise you too?
Yeah, I think he can be an everyday player maybe next year.
Yeah.
Multiple positions. I'm like, oh man.
Like, I mean, I hope you're right. I hope you're getting this right. I hope that you're sitting there saying, hey, this was his first year in the big leagues. He held his own. He did fine, and we think there's more there, and he could be a guy for us. I hope you're right, but boy, that's a gamble if you're taking that as an approach.
It sure is. Sure is. Yeah. Look, I mean, we can talk about the therapeutic part of yesterday, pointing fingers, what they're going to do. It still brings you back to, at the end of the day, it was a pretty good team. It wasn't good enough. It hasn't been good enough. They're going to spend money. They're going to be aggressive. There are restrictions in that. They're never going to outspend the Dodgers. Where does it leave you now? And so while I went ooh and ah as I listened to all of this, wow, he said that, he went there. Oh, he's not taking responsibility on this. What are you going to do differently? I agree. I mean, look, if you move on from Kyle Schwarber, and I do think that you can make the case that paying a DH who's 33 years old or 32, whatever he is, and going 4 years, 130 for him or whatever it's going to take. Maybe if it's more than that, I don't know. Like, is that the smartest thing to do? Maybe not. But if you are trying to, if the idea is like, let's win a World Series in 2026, how do you subtract that power from a lineup that, and though you can look at the slug and say it wasn't terrible and they had a bunch of guys hit double-digit home runs, there's not enough slug in this lineup. And if you remove Kyle Schwarber from it, where's it coming from?
Yeah, and not only that, Bob, I think that there's, and you're spot on with it, but there's more to it than that. If you think that you can be a championship contending team in 2026, it's his clubhouse. It's Schwarber's clubhouse. You're taking that element out of the team too, and now you're going to basically say, find your new identity, because we just took away the guy who is your identity as well. Like, we might be able to bring, better spend that money and bring in 2 players for that money, right? Who can make the team seemingly on paper be a little bit better. But I don't necessarily know if that fixes things, makes things work in the clubhouse.
Right.
You got to find a whole new thing there. And that's tough to do.
Yeah. I mean, keep in mind, like, Bryce Harper didn't show up in 2022. He showed up in 2019 and it was a miss in 19. Same with Real Muto, by the way. 20 was a weird year, but they very much underperformed in 20. 21, they fell short. It wasn't until Schwarber got here that they figured it out. And I've referenced this multiple times on this show.
Yeah.
The Phillies looked like the Phillies for very much of September 22. And I always go back to it being Schwarber who was like, like, this is going to be different. We're not going to do this again. And maybe that's oversimplification. Maybe that's giving him too much credit, but I think that it was his presence that changed the fortunes of that team, because they were going where they always go that year.
Right.
And you remove him from the equation. Just take the 55, 56 home runs away. You take that part of it away. I don't know that they have enough here, especially after listening to the GM basically pick apart their intangibles yesterday. Well, you remove him now from it. Where are they?
Yeah, that's the thing. And so that's why I think it's so important for them is he's their top priority easily to bring back and start there and go. But that's what I'm saying. Like, there's going to be changes elsewhere.
Is Bader coming back? The Bader thing yesterday was weird. Like, there's this insinuation that if Bader was in the series, it would have been a different outcome. And all it takes is one plate appearance, one player. Like, I don't disagree with the notion that you're one guy or one plate appearance away in this series, and maybe it is Harrison Bader. That feels like, maybe a little bit of a stretch, but certainly would have been a better option than Brandon Marsh when you get into these tight situations against lefties. Like, do they just think the world of him to the point where they're like, here's 3 years, 30 million?
That was one of the biggest surprises for me yesterday too, was how much they talked about wanting to bring him back. Like, I kind of thought that it was going to be just assumed he's going to decline the mutual option so he can get a better contract. And there'll be a lot of teams that need a center fielder. and he showed that he could play there again. He's not declining in the outfield. He had his best offensive season of his career. He's going to get paid. And I'm thinking, all right, well, the odds of him coming back are pretty slim. But the way that both Dombrowski and Rob Thomson talked about him made it sound like the Phillies are going to pursue bringing him back, like significantly so. Well, whether they get it done or not, I don't know. But yeah, I felt that was a little bit of a surprise. And that's, maybe it's a good thing. If you look at it and you say, we're willing to give him a 3-year deal and guarantee that he'll be center fielder for 2 years. And then maybe the third year we shift him over to the, a corner spot or whatever. But that kind of surprised me a little bit. And it's not in a good way. I think that would be a nice thing for the Phillies to try and bring in Harrison Bader again.
Along those lines, I think that this team very much wants to hold on to Jesus Luzardo long term. I wonder, and that should be obvious, especially with the uncertainty of Ranger Suarez's situation. I assume Ranger Suarez is out of here. Nothing yesterday made me feel any better about him being back. I don't know if you disagree with that, but I think it's probably prudent for the Phillies to engage Jesus Luzardo about a long-term deal now. Like, if you think he's going to be part of the equation, go do this now.
I think Jesus Luzardo is one of the 5 most important players on the Phillies right now.
Well, and I can't believe is that in part because you don't know what you're going to get out of Zach Wheeler next year as well?
I can't believe I'm saying that, but the reality of it is that I look at this team and I say, like, if I said to you before the season, who are the Phillies' 5 most important players, and I say to you now, who are the Phillies' 5 most important players, I think the 2 guys that jump into the list now that probably weren't there at the beginning of the year are Christopher Sanchez and Jesus Luzardo.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Duran too, maybe 3, to be honest with you. I mean, in all honesty.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's interesting. The one thing that they're not going to change, Bob, or at least for the most part not going to change, is the entirety of the coaching staff. Obviously, we talked about Rob Thomson coming back as manager, but they're bringing back the entire coaching staff. The only change is going to be that bench coach Mike Calitri is going to be put into kind of a new position, which the Phillies had never had before, but teams are starting to do now, which is a major league field coordinator. Just so everybody knows what that is, it's kind of like the administrative manager is what that role is. Who's working out when, who's on the field at this time, whatever, checking in on the players and making sure everybody's healthy and, communicating it back to the manager and the coaching staff. Like, it's kind of a more of an administrative managerial role, right? And then they're going to hire a new bench coach. And the interesting thing there was, as Dombrowski said, ideally it would be a bench coach with managerial experience, just to offer a different perspective. So I want to kind of get your thoughts on that.
I know that that's the role. And so adding that role, because a lot of teams are already there, I'm fine with that. That makes a lot of sense to me. The bench coach thing is interesting, though, in that, are they bringing in a possible successor? Like, I know that they're talking about maybe doing another year on Rob's deal. They don't want to make him lame duck, that whole thing. But, Rob's not going to be here forever. He's talked about retirement and stepping away from the game. I don't think that Rob Thompson's going to be the Phillies manager in 2028. Even if they win one, I don't think he'll be here in 2028. So is this like a transition piece here?
Yes.
And that's what I think this is really about. And if you wanted to be a little bit more like cynical about it, you could say, oh, like they don't trust Rob's decision-making, so they want to reinforce that and have more of a collaborative response in the moment. Maybe that's true, but I don't think it's so much about that as it is we want to find that bridge.
Yeah. And I was talking about this with Tim Kelly, and, he thinks it's awkward to do that, to have like the manager in waiting there. And I think that I disagreed with him. And I said, I think if you're a team that has the aspiration of winning a championship, it's fine. Like, there is no awkwardness there at that point. Like, it's awkward if you're a mediocre team, or, or one that's uncertain about the future of the current manager, and like that's hanging over his head, and first sign of trouble, you sit there and go, oh, should they make the change now? I think that there's something real there that the Phillies are looking, saying, we don't know what the landscape of baseball is going to be after the 2026 season because of the potential labor war in 27. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know where our guys are going to be. If we lose an entire 2027 season, what does our team look like in 2028? Let's get that guy in place now so that we don't have to worry about scrambling for it in a couple years.
Yeah.
And so now the question is, who is that guy, right? Like, who's out there that has managerial experience? And do you go somebody that's more old school, more, or do you go with a younger name? The name that jumped off the page for me was Rocco Baldelli, who just, got let go by the Twins. He's younger, or David Ross, who was managing the Cubs and got shoved out because counsel became available. Like names like that, I would sit there and go, okay, I'm with you. Like, I'm kind of with you there. I don't necessarily know if I would go with a guy who's been like a baseball lifer, been around, maybe has some managerial experience, but is older. Like, what's the value there?
Jimmy Williams?
Yeah, like that kind of thing. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. So I'm going to be curious to see what direction they go, and I think it's going to be an interesting hire, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Any other quick observations or anything else that jumped out at you yesterday? Oh, I have one. You have a better chance of playing right field for the 2026 Philadelphia Phillies next year than Nick Castellanos.
Correct. He didn't answer a question about it. Like, just dismiss it. He goes long-winded on every other question except for the one about Nick Castellanos.
There is no question that relationship has hit its expiration date.
It has. I think they're just going to flat out release him at this point. I don't even think that they're going to trade him. Right? I think it's going to be they're going to release him. The one thing, just to circle back to Harper real quick, because I didn't mention this, Rob Thomson did say he thinks that this will motivate him to have the best season of his career. So, for what it's worth, that was the one guy who just basically kind of said, I expect the world out of this guy. Now, that could be a little bit of a pressure thing too, right? But I think that was the one thing there. No, there wasn't really anything else that I thought that came out of that press conference that was really, really telling. You mentioned Alvarado. I think he's going to be back. I'm not certain that they're going to pick up the $9 million, but I think that they may do the buyout and then re-up him with a new contract, maybe for a little bit less up front, but maybe a new option on the back end for 27, so that if Alvarado meets certain parameters, he could get more than the $9 million that the Phillies are going to pay him, right? So I think that there's something that's going to be worked out there. And then the other thing is that they hinted that they wanted to add a year on to Rob's contract, which they haven't done it yet, but that it's probably going to come down. I don't think that impacts anything. I just think that it just takes away the distraction of a lame duck manager. I think that's all that's for. But no, beyond that, I didn't have anything else from yesterday.
We back here next October having a very similar conversation.
Well, I think next October our conversation is going to be, what's the future of baseball? In all honesty, like I am pretty certain that we're going to be missing part of the 27 season, if not all of it. I'm a little worried about that. I'm bummed that we're a year away from having to talk about stupid labor stuff, but no, it's going to be interesting, Bob. It's way too soon to say. I mean, the Phillies are going to be right in my mind. They're going to be right in the mix again, like they were this year. And like I said, I think it's going to age differently over time, and you're going to look back and say, "Damn, they were close against one of the best teams of a generation." But at the same time, I do think that I think they'll be there, but it's too early to say whether or not we're having this conversation again a year from now. So, one last thing, it's worth mentioning for to look at what's going on in the playoffs. Obviously, the Dodgers are spanking the Brewers. That's not a surprise to us. Just kind of curious what your takeaway is so far on Mariners and Blue Jays, because that series has gone the exact opposite of how I thought it would. Like, I thought that the Blue Jays would jump out early and the Mariners would play better at home, and it's been the exact opposite. And that's 2-2. I still think Toronto is the better team here, but who knows? I mean, it's kind of up in the air. It's a coin flip at this point.
I think, just from a prediction standpoint, I think I would go with the Mariners in this moment, only in that, like, are they losing all three at home? Are they really going to lose all three at home? And I don't know that Toronto goes back and wins the last two to do it. I just feel like the Mariners are due now to respond. But last night was big. I mean, you had Scherzer out there. Obviously, a ton of balls, a ton of experience. You see what he did last night too, right?
John Schneider, yeah.
Schneider comes out and he's like, absolutely not, in this game. And then he responds and he does it. And that's like a championship moment. I do think the Blue Jays are the better team. We'll see. I hope it goes 7 because God knows the NLCS isn't. And I would be more intrigued by Blue Jays Dodgers than Mariners Dodgers. That's for sure. But I don't want to do this thing because like we're in a big market and you're like, oh, the Phillies would have been the better team. That would have been more fun. Like would have been more fun here. I think nationally it would have been more interesting too. It's a shame. I mean, this World Series is going to just be.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is. But the real part of one last thing that I wanted to throw at you, because I know we got to run here in a minute, was the Vladimir Guerrero signing earlier this season the most important but most underrated story in baseball this year?
Yeah, it was also like the worst thing that could happen to the Phillies because that would be the guy I would have circled and said, "Go do it." There's your Juan Soto,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think you're onto that. I think that's for damn sure.
Yeah, I mean that that signing changed the course of the season in baseball.
Yeah,
it made the Blue Jays a legitimate team, and now he's been unbelievable in this playoffs for the Blue Jays. Yeah. Really has been really, really, really great player. All right, Bob. Well, I guess the next time we get together will be when there's Phillies news. I mean, there's no real reason to keep getting together to break it down. But hopefully we'll probably have something like every other week is kind of what we're hoping for here over the course of the next couple of months, and then we'll take you into spring training. But thanks to everybody for being on this ride with us twice a week since March 1st, 2025. And we really appreciate it, and we look forward to doing more great episodes of Fighting Words down the line. You can always find us, as always, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora, wherever you get your podcasts. But definitely subscribe to Fighting Words on YouTube. If you click that thumbs up, ring the bell, even though we might not be back together for a couple weeks, you'll get an alert, and that way you'll know that that we're live and you won't miss the show. And for those of you in the podcast feed, it's youtube.com/@FightingWords. So for one last time at the 2025 season, he's Bob Wankel. I'm Anthony Sanfilippo. Thanks for tuning in to Fighting Words, everyone, and we will talk with you soon.